When a little girl found a dying German shepherd lying helpless on the side of the road, no one believed he could survive. But her small hands, pure heart, and unshakable love sparked a miracle that changed everything. What followed was not just a rescue, but a journey of healing, hope, and a bond so powerful it left everyone in tears. Before we move on, if you're an animal lover, tap subscribe. It's completely free, and every click inspires us to keep sharing the stories that truly touch the heart and give a voice to those who can't speak for themselves. The morning sun was only just beginning to rise above the sleepy town of Millbrook when the stillness of the countryside was broken by the sound of hurried footsteps. 8-year-old Lily Carter walked along the gravel road that curved past the meadows and into the hills. She had taken this path many times before, usually with a notebook tucked under her arm, sketching butterflies and writing little stories about the animals she saw. But today, something made her stop. At first, she thought it was just a shadow in the grass. But then she heard it, a faint whimper, so weak it almost blended with the wind. Her eyes widened, and her small hands trembled as she knelt down. There, lying half-hidden among the tall weeds, was a German shepherd. The dog's fur was tangled and blood-streaked, her body unnaturally still except for the shallow rise and fall of her chest. One hind leg was twisted at an odd angle, and patches of her coat were matted where gravel and dirt had stuck to old wounds. The shepherd's eyes, deep brown and clouded with pain, flickered open for only a moment before closing again. Lily's heart pounded. She was only a child, yet some instinct told her that the creature before her was clinging to life by the thinnest thread. "Hey, it's okay," she whispered, her voice shaking. "You're not alone." Her jacket was too small to cover the whole dog, but she slid it off anyway and laid it gently across the shepherd's shoulders. She could feel the tremors beneath the fur. She had no training, no tools, just a heart that refused to walk away. Hands fumbling, Lily pulled the flip phone her mother insisted she carry just in case. She pressed speed dial with trembling fingers. "Mom, please come quick. There's a dog. She's hurt really bad. On the road by the big oak tree. Hurry." Within minutes, the familiar rumble of the family's dusty station wagon came up the road. Sarah Carter, Lily's mother, worked as a veterinary nurse in town. She leapt from the driver's seat before the car had fully stopped, her medical bag already in hand. Together, mother and daughter lifted the dog as carefully as they could into the back of the wagon. The shepherd whimpered once, then went silent, her head resting against Lily's lap. Lily bent low, whispering words she wasn't sure the animal could even hear. "You're safe now. I've got you." The drive to the small veterinary clinic blurred into a haze of whispered comfort and the steady hum of the engine. Lily's hands never left the shepherd's fur, even as tears slipped silently down her cheeks. At the clinic, the staff moved quickly. The diagnosis was grim: a fractured hind leg, dehydration, shock, and signs of prolonged exhaustion. No collar, no microchip, no sign of where she had come from. "She's lucky you found her when you did," Sarah murmured as she adjusted the foreline. Another hour, and it might have been too late. But while the adults worked, Lily never left the shepherd's side. She pressed her face to the cold bars of the recovery crate and whispered softly, "Don't give up. I'm right here." That night, when the clinic lights dimmed and the halls grew quiet, Lily curled up on a blanket beside the crate, refusing to go home. Her mother let her stay, recognizing something unspoken. The bond had already been formed. Lily had always loved animals. Even as a toddler, she would chase fireflies not to catch them, but to wave at them. She spoke to stray cats as if they were neighbors. Yet lately, a heaviness had settled over her. Only 3 months earlier, Lily's father had passed suddenly from a heart condition. Since then, she had grown quieter, her sketchbooks untouched, her laughter rare. But when she looked into the shepherd's eyes, something stirred inside her. A reflection, a silent recognition of pain and loneliness she knew too well. That first night, the dog barely moved. Her breaths were shallow, uneven. But as Lily leaned close, she thought she saw the faintest flicker of acknowledgement, as if the shepherd was choosing, just barely, to stay. Lily smiled through her tears. "I'll call you Grace," she whispered, "because you're still here. And you're going to keep fighting." Grace didn't wag her tail. She didn't bark. But her eyelids fluttered, and that was enough for Lily to believe. The days that followed became a quiet ritual. After school, Lily rushed to the clinic, books tucked under her arm. She sat cross-legged on the floor and read aloud. Sometimes fairy tales, sometimes stories of loyalty and courage. Sometimes she simply talked about her day. At first, Grace only blinked, her gaze following Lily's movements. But slowly, things began to change. One afternoon, as Lily bent to retrieve her fallen pencil, she heard it, the faintest thump of a tail against the blanket. Her breath caught. Grace was responding. From that day forward, Grace fought harder. She sat up more often, accepted gentle brushings of her fur, and even leaned her head into Lily's lap as if to say, "I know you're here." "You're the reason she's healing," Sarah told her daughter one evening. Lily only nodded, her hand resting gently on Grace's neck. She didn't need the words explained. She already knew. Grace was no longer just a dog she had rescued. She was the beginning of something Lily couldn't yet name, a story waiting to unfold. And though Lily didn't know it yet, saving Grace would change the course of her life forever. The clinic's rhythm became part of Lily's world. While other children hurried to playgrounds or television screens, she hurried instead to Grace's side. The German Shepherd, though still frail, was slowly reclaiming the will to live. Each improvement felt monumental. The way her ears twitched when Lily read aloud, the hesitant lapse of water from her bowl, the subtle lift of her head when footsteps echoed down the hall. Yet progress came with setbacks. Some mornings, Grace refused to eat. Other times, she whimpered in her sleep, body stiff with invisible nightmares. Once, when a technician tried to move her, she snapped weakly, eyes wild with fear, not malice. "She's been through something," Sarah explained softly after that incident. "Dogs don't react like that unless they've seen more than they should." Lily didn't need the warning. She already sensed it. Grace carried stories in her silence, scars etched into her fur and her spirit alike. And though Lily's hands were small, she was determined to carry some of that weight for her. At home, the Carters' modest house felt different now. Lily's empty sketchbook began to fill again. Quick pencil drawings of Grace resting, Grace blinking, Grace dreaming. Her laughter returned in soft bursts when Grace attempted to nibble clumsily at a toy. Even Sarah noticed. "It's like you've both decided to heal together," she remarked one evening, watching Lily carefully spoon soft food into Grace's bowl. Lily didn't look up. "She needs me. And maybe I need her too." Her mother's eyes softened. In truth, she'd worried endlessly about Lily after her husband's passing. But here, in the fragile bond between girl and dog, she saw the first spark of light breaking through her daughter's grief. The day Grace first stood was one Lily would never forget. It was late afternoon, and golden sunlight slanted through the clinic's blinds. Lily was sitting on the floor, humming absent-mindedly while braiding a piece of yarn she'd found in her pocket. Grace shifted, her front paws pressing harder against the bedding. Lily's eyes shot up. "Grace!" The shepherd trembled, pushing with her good hind leg, struggling to rise. Her injured limb remained splinted, but determination blazed in her eyes. "Wait, don't hurt yourself," Lily cried, rushing forward. But instead of collapsing, Grace wobbled upright, swaying like a sapling in the wind. Lily gasped, tears springing instantly to her eyes. "You did it, you're standing." Grace's chest rose and fell rapidly, but she stayed there, tail giving one uncertain wag. Lily threw her arms around the dog's neck, careful of the bandages. Grace leaned into the embrace, as though the warmth of the little girl's joy was enough to hold her steady. That night, Lily filled an entire page of her sketchbook, stick figures of herself beside a towering shepherd, both smiling under a sun far bigger than proportion allowed. For the first time in months, Lily taped her artwork proudly on her bedroom wall. Yet recovery was not just physical. Trust, too, had to be rebuilt. Grace startled easily at sudden noises. The clang of a dropped tray made her cower. The slam of a door sent her scrambling under blankets. Lily, patient and gentle, began introducing little comforts, soft music playing, whispered reassurances, steady touches. Slowly, The walls around Grace's heart began to crack. One evening, while Lily read aloud from a story about knights and loyal companions, Grace rested her muzzle on Lily's lap unprompted. Lily froze, afraid to scare her off, then smiled so wide it hurt. She stroked the shepherd's ears, whispering, "See? You can trust me." From that night forward, Grace never slept without pressing against the bars closest to where Lily sat. Weeks passed, and soon the vet announced what Lily had been dreaming of. Grace was strong enough to leave the clinic. Her leg was healing, though still bound in a brace, and she would need ongoing care. Sarah hesitated. Bringing a recovering dog into their small home meant responsibility, financial strain, time, and energy. But when she looked at Lily's pleading eyes, she saw something undeniable. "She belongs with us, doesn't she?" Sarah murmured. Lily's nod was immediate, fierce. And so, one bright morning, Grace stepped, or rather, limped, into the Carter household. Lily had prepared everything: a blanket bed in her room, bowls polished clean, and a hand-painted sign taped above the corner reading Grace's spot. The shepherd sniffed the space cautiously, her paws clicking against the floorboards. Then, with a soft sigh, she circled twice and collapsed onto the blanket. Lily lay beside her, cheek pressed to fur, smiling as though the entire world had been set right. But shadows still lingered. One evening, as Sarah brushed Grace's fur, she uncovered an old, half-healed wound near the dog's shoulder. The pattern of it chilled her. It was too clean, too deliberate, almost as if inflicted by human hands. She said nothing to Lily, not wanting to dim the glow of happiness, but her mind raced with questions. Where had Grace come from? Who had hurt her? And most importantly, what if those who had abandoned her were still out there? For now, though, Lily lived only in the present. Each morning, she woke with Grace curled beside her bed. Each afternoon, they walked together in slow, careful steps, sunlight catching on Grace's golden fur. And each night, Lily whispered her secret promise into the shepherd's ear: "I'll never let you be alone again." What neither girl nor dog could know was that this promise would soon be tested in ways neither could imagine. Autumn settled gently over Millbrook, painting the trees with gold and crimson. The Carter household began to pulse with new life, the quiet sorrow that once lingered replaced by the rhythms of care. Grace was healing, not just in body but in spirit. Her limp was less pronounced now, and though she tired quickly, she moved with increasing confidence beside Lily. Neighbors began to notice. "That shepherd looks like a miracle," Mr. Thompson from down the street remarked one morning. Lily grinned proudly, as if the compliment belonged to her too. In many ways, it did. At school, Lily spoke more, laughed more, even joined her classmates in games again. Teachers whispered that the little girl who had once seemed so withdrawn was finding her voice again. She never said it aloud, but Lily knew why. Grace was her anchor, the silent friend who listened without judgment and stood as proof that broken things could mend. One crisp Saturday, Lily and Grace ventured a little farther on their walk, along the winding trail near the old mill. Grace padded ahead, ears pricked, nose twitching at every scent. Then, without warning, she froze. Her body stiffened, tail tucked low, a growl rumbling from deep within her chest. "Grace?" Lily asked, startled. From the trail ahead, two men appeared. They were rough-looking, dressed in worn jackets, cigarettes dangling from their lips. They slowed as they saw the dog, eyes narrowing. "That's her," one of them muttered under his breath. Lily didn't hear the words, but Grace did. The shepherd barked, loud and sharp, positioning herself between Lily and the strangers. The sound was fierce, nothing like the gentle companion Lily knew. The men exchanged glances. One spat on the ground, the other tugged his sleeve. Without a word, they turned and disappeared back into the trees. Lily clutched Grace's fur, heart racing. "It's okay," she whispered shakily. "They're gone." But inside, a seed of fear had been planted. When they returned home, Sarah noticed the tension in Grace's posture, the way her ears flicked at every sound. When Lily explained what happened, Sarah's jaw tightened. She remembered the wound on Grace's shoulder, the wariness in her eyes. Something about those men's reaction gnawed at her. That evening, Sarah called the local shelter, asking if any reports matched Grace's description. The shelter worker sighed. We've had whispers about a group using shepherds for illegal fighting. Some get dumped when they're no longer useful. Could be your dog was one of them. Sarah's stomach turned. She looked at Lily, who was curled on the floor beside Grace, coloring happily. No, she couldn't let that truth shatter the fragile peace her daughter had found. Not yet. But Grace seemed to know. That night, she paced restlessly, ears pricked to sounds no one else could hear. When Lily reached out to comfort her, Grace settled only after pressing her body close, as if promising to protect the child at any cost. Days turned into weeks, and life found its balance again. Grace grew stronger, learning to run short distances, her brace finally removed. Lily reveled in every milestone, cheering her on, hugging her tight after each small victory. But shadows lurked still. One rainy afternoon, as Sarah drove Lily home from school, a truck pulled out from a side road and lingered behind them. Sarah noticed it in the mirror, a dark, dented pickup, its headlights too close. When she turned onto their lane, it turned too. Only when they reached the driveway and Sarah deliberately pulled into the garage did the truck finally speed past. She forced a smile for Lily, hiding her unease. But in her chest, fear grew. That night, thunder rolled across the sky. Lightning flashed, illuminating the Carter home in stark bursts. Lily huddled beneath her blanket, Grace pressed tight against her side. In the distance, over the rain's steady drumming, Grace's ears flicked. She lifted her head, growling softly. Lily stirred. "What is it, girl?" Another flash of lightning revealed movement near the edge of the yard, two figures, darting quickly out of sight. Grace barked furiously, leaping toward the window. Lily cried out in fright, and Sarah rushed into the room. By the time she peered outside, nothing remained but the storm's fury. "Just shadows," Sarah murmured, though her trembling hands betrayed her calm voice. But Grace knew better. Her bark had not been for shadows. From that night forward, the shepherd became a guardian in the truest sense. She slept with one ear always alert, positioned herself at doors and windows, and walked with her body pressed protectively against Lily's side. And Lily, though unsettled by the strange events, trusted Grace completely. "She won't let anything happen to me," she told her mother confidently. Sarah wished she shared her daughter's certainty. Then, one evening, as Sarah closed up the clinic after a long day, she found an envelope tucked beneath the door. No name, no return address. Inside was a single scrap of paper with 4 words scrawled in uneven ink. "That dog is ours." Sarah's breath caught, her heart pounding as the paper slipped from her hands. The miracle that had brought Grace into their lives was no longer just a blessing. It was also a warning. And the fight to keep her safe had only just begun. The note sat on the kitchen table, its 4 words burning into Sarah's thoughts. "That dog is ours." She tried to shield Lily from it, but Grace's heightened vigilance betrayed the truth. The shepherd seemed to sense the danger, her protective instincts sharpening each day. Sarah contacted the local police, handing over the envelope. Officer Daniels, a graying man with kind eyes, frowned. "We've had complaints about men breeding and using shepherds for fighting in the outskirts. Hard to pin down, no one talks. But if they're watching your place, it's serious. We'll keep patrols in the area." Lily overheard enough to understand. "They can't take her, Mom," she said fiercely, arms locked around Grace's neck. "She's mine. She's family." Sarah knelt, brushing back her daughter's hair. "No one's going to take her, sweetheart. I promise." But promises felt fragile against the weight of the unknown. The following week became a test of courage. Each creak of the porch, each unfamiliar car on the road made Sarah's stomach clench. She kept the house locked, curtains drawn at night. Grace patrolled constantly, her presence both comforting and haunting. One afternoon, Lily brought Grace to the meadow by the old oak tree. The air was crisp, the sky wide and blue. Lily laughed as Grace trotted clumsily after a tossed stick, her limp barely noticeable now. For a moment, all was peace. Then Lily spotted it. A man leaning against a fence post at the far edge of the field, cigarette smoke curling above his head. He wasn't watching the horizon. He was watching them. Grace barked sharply, fur bristling, her body angled like a shield in front of Lily. The man smirked faintly before turning away, disappearing behind the tree. Fear surged in Lily's chest. She ran home, tears streaming, Grace sprinting beside her despite her weakened leg. "Mom." They were there. Lily sobbed, clutching Grace. Sarah held her trembling daughter close. Enough was enough. She called Officer Daniels again. That evening, Daniels visited the Carter home. Grace sniffed him cautiously but seemed to approve, settling beside Lily as the officer spoke. "They want her back because she's valuable," Daniels explained grimly. "A purebred shepherd, trained to fight or guard. But you saved her first. If they come near again, we'll act. Keep watch, and don't let Lily or Grace out of sight." Sarah nodded, but her heart ached. She couldn't tell Lily everything. That people could see animals not as lives, but as tools to be used and discarded. Lily's innocence was already frayed. She couldn't bear to break it further. That night, Lily lay awake, Grace pressed close. She whispered into the shepherd's fur, "They don't understand. You're not theirs. You're mine." Grace nuzzled against her, eyes steady, as though pledging silent agreement. The next days were tense. The truck Sarah had seen before drove past slowly more than once. Anonymous calls came in, silence on the other end. At the clinic, Sarah noticed unfamiliar faces lingering too long near the parking lot. Still, moments of beauty persisted. Grace's coat grew glossy under Lily's care. She learned to fetch gently, to heel on command, even to nudge Lily's hand whenever she sensed the girl growing sad. In return, Lily's laughter became a daily sound again, ringing through the house like sunlight. It was as though they were weaving a fragile net of joy to hold against the gathering storm. The storm broke one Friday evening. Lily and Grace were playing in the yard when the rumble of a truck echoed down the road. Before Sarah could react, two men jumped from the vehicle, their movements sharp and purposeful. "There she is," one barked. Grace lunged forward, teeth bared, her bark thunderous. Lily froze, terror rooting her to the spot. The men advanced, one carrying a rope loop, the other a heavy stick. "Mom!" Lily screamed. Sarah burst from the porch, phone in hand, shouting, "Get away from her! The police are on their way." But the men didn't flinch. One swung the stick toward Grace. She dodged, snarling, her body a wall in front of Lily. In the chaos, headlights cut across the yard. Officer Daniels' cruiser skidded to a halt, siren wailing. "Police! Step back!" he roared. The men froze. Grace growled low, her teeth flashing in the light. With Daniels advancing, weapon drawn, the intruders cursed and fled, leaping back into their truck and tearing down the road. Silence followed, broken only by Lily's sobs and Grace's heavy panting. Sarah gathered her daughter close, while Grace stood trembling but resolute, her eyes locked on the direction the men had gone. Daniels lowered his weapon, sighing heavily. "That was close. Too close. We'll patrol more often, but you should know, they won't give up easily." Sarah swallowed hard. She looked at her daughter, at the dog who had already survived so much. "Then we won't either." That night, Grace lay stretched across Lily's doorway like a guardian carved from stone. Lily, though shaken, eventually drifted into sleep, her hand resting lightly on Grace's fur. And Sarah sat awake in the quiet house, realizing something with unshakable clarity. Grace had not only been rescued, she had been chosen, and the Carters would fight for her as fiercely as she fought for them. The night after the attack, the Carter home felt different. Every creak in the floorboards, every whisper of wind against the windows carried weight. Sarah double-checked every lock, every curtain, while Grace paced like a sentinel. Lily tried to be brave, but her small voice cracked when she whispered, "What if they come back?" Sarah knelt and placed her hands on her daughter's shoulders. "Then we'll face them together. Grace isn't going anywhere." Grace pressed her head into Lily's lap, as if echoing the promise. Over the next few days, neighbors rallied. Mr. Thompson from down the street installed a motion sensor light on the Carter's porch. Mrs. Alvarez, who ran the corner store, dropped off canned food and supplies. Word spread quickly about the men, about Grace's story, about the little girl who had refused to let a dying dog slip away. The town had quietly adopted Grace too. But the danger was far from over. Late one evening, Officer Daniels knocked on the door with news. "We've tracked their truck," he said grimly. "They're part of an operation we've been trying to shut down. Dogfighting, illegal breeding, you name it." Grace wasn't the first they dumped, but she might be one of the few who escaped. Lily's hands tightened around Grace's collar. "They can't have her," she said fiercely. Daniels smiled sadly. "No, kiddo. They won't. Not if we stand our ground." The next confrontation came sooner than anyone expected. It was a Sunday afternoon, the air heavy with storm clouds. Lily was in the yard, sketching Grace as the shepherd lay stretched beneath the oak tree. Sarah was nearby, pruning the garden. Everything seemed calm, until the sound of an engine shattered the quiet. The dented truck roared back into view. This time, 3 men jumped out. "Grab her," one barked. Grace shot to her feet, teeth bared, standing over Lily before Sarah could even react. The men advanced, ropes and chains in their hands. "Stay behind me, Lily," Sarah cried, fumbling for her phone. Grace charged. Despite her old injury, she moved with astonishing power, lunging at the first man and knocking him backward into the dirt. He cursed, swinging his arm to shove her off, but Grace clamped down on his sleeve, refusing to yield. The second man rushed forward, only to be met with Grace's growl so fierce it froze him in place. The third circled wide, reaching for Lily. "Mom!" Lily screamed. Sarah darted in front of her daughter, wielding the garden shears like a weapon. Her voice shook, but her stance did not. "Stay away from my family." The standoff burned hot, seconds stretched into eternity. Then, the rising wail of sirens split the air. The men panicked. One yanked his arm free, another cursed under his breath. Together they scrambled back toward their truck. Grace barked furiously, chasing them to the edge of the property before Sarah called her back. The cruiser screeched into the driveway. Officer Daniels and 2 deputies leapt out, weapons drawn. Within moments, the truck was blocked, the men dragged out in handcuffs. "You're finished," Daniels growled as they were shoved into the back of the patrol car. "You don't get to hurt anyone again." Silence fell after the storm of chaos. Lily ran forward, throwing her arms around Grace's neck. "You saved me," she whispered, sobbing into her fur. Grace licked her cheek gently, tail wagging at last in relief. Sarah sank onto the porch steps, trembling. For the first time in weeks, she allowed herself to cry, not in fear, but in gratitude. Daniels approached softly. "She's safe now. You all are. We've got enough evidence to shut their whole operation down." Sarah nodded, wiping her tears. "Thank you. But really, it's Grace we should be thanking." The days that followed were filled with healing. Grace bore scratches and bruises from the scuffle, but she wore them like medals of honor. Lily stayed by her side constantly, sketching picture after picture of her brave protector. One drawing in particular stood out: a little girl holding hands with her mother, a German shepherd towering proudly beside them. Above it, Lily had written in careful letters, "My family." Weeks later, the Carters stood together at the town park during a small community gathering. Word of Grace's story had spread far, inspiring others to adopt rescues, to speak up against cruelty, to believe in second chances. Lily clutched Grace's leash proudly, introducing her to every curious child who approached. Grace, once broken and afraid, now stood tall, still protective, but also gentle, leaning down to accept pats with quiet dignity. "She's not just a dog," Lily told one wide-eyed friend. "She's my miracle." Sarah, standing nearby, smiled through misty eyes. She knew her daughter was right. Grace had been more than rescued. She had rescued them too, stitching together wounds deeper than any doctor could reach. That night, back at home, Lily curled beneath her blanket with Grace stretched beside her bed. The moonlight fell across the room, silvering the shepherd's fur. "Good night, Grace," Lily whispered sleepily. "Thank you for staying." Grace let out a soft huff, eyes closing, body relaxing at last. And in the quiet house, Sarah lingered at the doorway, heart full. From grief and fear had risen something stronger: love, loyalty, the unbreakable bond between a little girl and the dog she refused to give up on. Against all odds, they had found each other. And that was the truest miracle of all. The months that followed unfolded like chapters from a story Emma and her family never imagined living. What began with a frail, dying German shepherd on the side of a lonely road had become a tale of healing, love, and unshakable bonds that rippled far beyond their home. Max was no longer a shadow of survival. He was thriving, running through fields, guarding their yard, and sleeping peacefully at Emma's feet each night. Yet beneath it all lay the constant awareness. They had almost lost him, and every moment now felt like a miracle preserved. One morning, as Emma prepared for school, Max trotted up to her with a ball in his mouth. His tail wagged in steady rhythm, eyes shining with mischief. Emma laughed, kneeling to hug him. "You want to play fetch before breakfast?" she asked. He barked once in agreement, and Karen, watching from the porch, felt her heart swell. The sight of her daughter wrapped in joy, her arms around the dog they had once feared wouldn't survive, was nothing short of grace. Charlie, too, found his life changed in quiet ways. He had always been cautious about forming attachments, having seen how fleeting things could be. But Max broke that wall down brick by brick. The boy, once shy and reserved, now carried a new sense of confidence. Neighbors even noticed, remarking how he spoke more, smiled more, and carried himself with a strength beyond his years. "It's Max," he admitted one day to his teacher, who had asked. "He makes me brave." The family often returned to the roadside where Emma first found Max. They would stand there quietly, recalling how broken he had looked and how easily the world might have kept driving past. Emma always crouched down, hugging Max tightly at that spot. "This is where I chose you," she whispered, and though the dog could not speak, his gentle nuzzle told her he understood. As time passed, Max's story spread. Karen had once shared a photo of him, scarred yet smiling beside Emma, on a local community page. To her surprise, it went viral. Messages poured in from strangers, people moved to tears, families inspired to adopt their own rescues, others confessing they had once been afraid to take in a broken animal but were reconsidering after hearing about Max. One message struck Karen deeply. "Your daughter's compassion reminded me to look past my fear. Today, I adopted a senior dog from the shelter." Thank you. Emma didn't care about the attention, though. For her, the miracle wasn't in the likes or comments. It was in waking up each morning to Max's soft breath by her side, in feeling his warmth when nightmares startled her awake, in knowing she had saved not only his life, but a part of herself too. Still, the journey wasn't without reminders of the past. One evening, fireworks exploded in the distance, and Max trembled, his body curling against the floor. His scars, emotional and physical, flared back to life. Emma rushed to him, kneeling, her small arms wrapping around his massive frame. "It's okay, Max. I'm here." Her voice, gentle and steady, anchored him. Slowly, his shaking eased. And in that moment, Emma realized miracles didn't erase pain. They gave strength to face it. Karen often wondered what Max had endured before that day on the road. The cruelty of humans, the abandonment, the hunger, it was a history written into his bones. But she also saw how Emma's love had rewritten his story. Where once there was despair, there was now trust. Where once there was silence, there were playful barks. Max's past would always exist, but it no longer defined him. One crisp autumn morning, Emma led Max, Charlie, and her mother to a hill near their house. Leaves crunched under their shoes, and Max bounded ahead, stopping only to glance back as if to make sure they were still following. At the top of the hill, the sunrise painted the world in gold. Emma leaned against Max, her small hand on his thick fur. "You're my miracle," she whispered, and Karen felt tears blur her vision. It struck her then. Miracles weren't always loud or dazzling. Sometimes, they arrived quietly, disguised as small acts of courage, like a little girl refusing to walk away from a dying dog. Sometimes, they grew in the spaces between heartbreak and hope, stitching lives together in ways no one could have planned. That evening, as the family sat together, Karen spoke softly. "Do you realize what Max gave us? He gave us more than just himself. He gave us love we didn't know we were missing." Charlie nodded. Emma, her arms around Max's neck, whispered, "And he gave me a best friend. Outside, the wind rustled through the trees, carrying with it a sense of peace. Max lifted his head, ears twitching, before resting it again against Emma's lap. His breathing was steady, his heart strong. And in that home, where once there had been doubt and fear, there was now only warmth. A little girl had seen life where others might have seen nothing. She had believed when no one else did. And because of that, a miracle had unfolded, not just for Max, but for everyone whose lives he touched. The story did not end with survival. It blossomed into a legacy. For years to come, neighbors would speak of the day Emma saved Max. They would recall how love had turned weakness into strength, how compassion had sparked change, and how a little girl's determination had made the impossible possible. Emma often dreamed of that first night, kneeling on the cold road beside Max's broken body. But in her dreams now, he always rose, strong, whole, alive. And when she woke, she would smile, because that dream had become her reality. The miracle wasn't just that Max had lived. The miracle was that in saving him, they had all been saved too.